My name's Luan Haddad. My husband Tony was diagnosed with cancer in 2015, and at the time we didn't realise it was anything to worry about. It was a skin cancer, so we just carried on as normal. He had a number of operations and didn't think anything of it for about a year, and then progressively we found out that some of the cancer had actually spread, so we needed a lot more support than we actually started off with. So about 18 months before we lost him, we got involved with City Hospice. So initially it was medical support. We had a range of support really. We've got two small children at the time, so Connor and Lara, who are now 19 and 17, but were very young when Tony was first diagnosed. And we started to have a lot of visits from doctors and supporters of Marie Curie support and a whole range. But the hospice were the ones that came in, took control of everything. So we had a doctor from the hospice that came in to speak to Tony, and we had support in terms of a family. And it kind of snowballed really, that initially it was just some visits, and as he progressed and as his disease got worse, we had more visits from City Hospice, not just from the doctor, but from Claire, who was our allocated nurse, who was absolutely unbelievable. She was just an amazing support for all of us. Anything that needed sorting out, she would come in and help. She was a phone call away constantly, so we had a lot of medical support, but Claire, although she was medical support, she gave us an awful lot of emotional support as well. We were offered support on an emotional level from the hospice. So my children and I, because Tony was quite stoic and didn't want to have anything other than medical intervention, he didn't really want to have counselling support, but the children really needed something, and we came in and started seeing Sarah Bull as a family. So the children had a lot of support from Sarah. They came to counselling sessions with Sarah. They came to group sessions. They made things every time they came that focused on the positives. And I then started having counselling as well with Sarah, because there was so much going on for us as a family, trying to sort of support Tony, support the children. It was quite difficult. So the hospice really were amazing for that. For me personally, I don't know how I'd have managed without Sarah, and then meeting other people in the hospice as well. Later on then in 2020, just before COVID, my mum was also diagnosed with cancer, in a very, not the same cancer, but a very similar kind of symptoms. So again, the children were sort of seeing this because we were living with my parents at the time. And during COVID, it was the only medical support we could get was actually from the hospice. So it was the hospice again that came out to visit my mum despite all the restrictions. And unfortunately, she ended up in hospital, and we lost her then. The work they do here is amazing, and not just the medical stuff, it's everything that sits alongside that helps not just the patient, not just Tony, who had all that medical support, but us as a family, which was so critical for us to get through probably, hopefully, the worst time of our lives. One of the things I always commented on Tony was that he was a modern day Del Boy Trotter. So it was a running joke really, because he did do fundraising and he did a lot of sort of charity work himself, but he kind of had this real Del Boy Trotter approach to him. And Lara, my daughter, would always comment on that, that he'd always be trying to stop people to get them to donate money all the time, but he'd have this only fools and horses approach. So it was a running joke about him really, but he was always very fun for the children. He was kind of like a mate, he'd be quite happy to sort of concentrate on giving them Haribos for dinner, and they used to love the fun element of him. He was a huge Aston Villa fan, absolutely, probably the biggest Aston Villa fan on the planet, and he, I got dragged to many a football match, I don't know how many times. The children would always sort of comment on him with Aston Villa, do you love us more than Aston Villa, sort of thing. So they always had that bit of a joke with him, and he used to take Connor to football matches, because Connor played when he was young, and then he introduced Connor to golf, so he got him into his hobbies as well. So he absolutely loved that sort of sharing of things, and Connor carried on playing golf as well after we lost Tony. He doesn't play as much now, but he did enjoy it. And he was always sort of quite, I think, enamoured that he had a little girl as well. He found Lara sort of quite fun and always telling him off and telling him what to do. So it was quite a sort of almost like a banter relationship, which she still seems to carry through. And they've got quite a few traits of their dad. But Lara, they both seem to have, he had a very dry, quick sense of humour, and they both seem to have that element about them. Every so often I'll say, "That's your dad, that is," they'll come out with something about their dad. And before we lost him, one of the things that children did, and because of his love of Aston Villa, was trying to find out if we could get something from the team. And we were lucky enough to have contacts through Cardiff City, where a friend of mine was able to contact one of the Aston Villa players who took his shirt off and got the entire team to sign it and sent it to me. And then the children presented him with this gift just before his birthday, which was, a few weeks then we lost him. But it's one of the things that they remember was this Aston Villa shirt that the whole players had signed, and their dad's reaction, because he was very stoic. He didn't feel he needed emotional support. And, as strange as it was, he got very emotional when they gave him the shirt, and they were overwhelmed and so pleased that he'd reacted about this shirt with them. It's one of the things they still think about is that Aston Villa shirt, and how Daddy reacted to it. I got involved with Forever Flowers a few years ago, so I volunteered for, I think it was the first event at Cardiff Castle when we did it. And it was such a lovely event, it was such a lovely idea that these flowers were representing your loved ones, that I wanted to get involved at the castle. So I was involved towards the end where people were coming to collect their flowers as well. And then I got involved again at the next event where people were coming to the hospice to collect the flowers. So it's just such a lovely representation. So we have a number of those flowers. We have some in the garden. We have some at the grave for my husband and for my mum as well. And it was just such a lovely representation for the people that you'd lost. The event itself is quite beautiful. The presentation of the flowers is quite beautiful, but what it represents in terms of the people that you have lost and how people responded to that was just a really nice thing to sort of stay involved with, really.